He's got great timing. Josh Holmes is a former chief of staff to Mitch McConnell, and Chuck Rocha, Democratic strategist and former Bernie Sanders campaign advisor. I got a chuckle out of that last night, Josh. You always love it when the principal gets up to read the speech. She's like, wait, I would never have said it that way.
Yeah. No, I know, Dave. I mean, this is what President Trump's supporters like the most about him, right? He breaks that fourth wall of political theater, lets the audience in on the joke. I mean, I bet that line has been delivered by every president, Republican or Democrat, since the very first American midterm election. And nobody really believes that the president feels that way, but they feel obligated to say it. And there's no question that the president feels as if this midterm is absolutely essential for his agenda to get done. So, yeah, right. It's a great laugh.
And Chuck, though, from the Democrats' perspective, it absolutely is the most important election. And the 2016 election is behind us, kind of. I mean, we still have to relitigate it every day, but it is behind us on the calendar. And the next election is 2018. What are your thoughts on how important this vote is to the Democrats?
Well, it made me think about it. I've been doing campaigns, Dana, and you know this, for like 25 years. And every 2 years, I look at people all around the country and go, this is the most important election of our lifetime, right? Well, good for Trump, because he was like, look, my election was the most important. This just in. Donald Trump thinks he's the most important, and everything about his election is. And it's a good point. You know, people kind of like that. It's kind of cheeky. But for the Democrats, it is a wave election. There's things happening out there. Who knows what it'll be by November, but there's definitely something happening on the ground that I'm seeing all across the country.
Now, let me just ask you about that. We just had Starwald on talking about last night's primary decisions, and you have now the general election matchups in a lot of these big contests. And Josh, are Republicans feeling like they are in a better position if the Democrats are going to put forward a candidate like Stacey Abrams in Georgia, who is a wonderful person, but very far left for a state that statewide, if you're running statewide, you almost have to run in the middle, but maybe I'm wrong.
You know, we've seen a lot of this, actually. It's been underplayed quite a bit in the media, but there's been a number of candidates on the Democratic side in primaries where they have elected the quote-unquote least electable option, the one that's sort of in the Bernie Sanders mold rather than a mainstream mold that can compete in the general election. We saw one in Kentucky last night. Amy McGrath beat Jim Gray, who was kind of the DCCC's #1 recruit to take on Andy Barr, a congressman in that district who's very formidable. And they elected somebody who's significantly to the left of where anybody thinks you can be to win that district. So they do have problems with that. It's something that we saw in the Republican Party in 2010 and 2012 that they largely corrected since then, but it continues to be a problem for both parties.
But Chuck, I wonder if you see it differently, especially because I just had Jeff Weaver on. He was the chairman of the manager of the Bernie Sanders campaign, and he says at the end of his book, had Bernie Sanders been the candidate in 2016 instead of Hillary Clinton, then that would have made the difference and the Democrats would have won in 2016. Do you think the similar type of energy on the far left is going to help Democrats actually win and reverse what conventional wisdom is that I and Josh Holmes just espoused?
You have to find a way to motivate the base, and you have to get a lot of people to come out and work. I worked for Jeff Weaver for 13 months. I was a senior advisor for Bernie, and what he says is exactly right. And Donald Trump has proven that point on the Republican side. He spent an entire presidential election motivating the base, giving them a reason for change, something that give them red meat. Let's see if this will work, and I'm willing to go down that path. And I think Stacey Abrams is exactly the kind of person who can win Georgia, and Amy McGrath in Kentucky is a veteran. She served in our armed forces. She may be a little left, but she's lived and bled for this country. That's the kind of people we need running.
That is true. I mean, if you look at their Red to Blue campaign, the DCCC's, Josh, they have tried to find candidates and recruit candidates that are either veterans that have some moderate views, I guess you could say, but also that they're getting out there, they're well-funded, and they're campaigning tough. I mean, is there a possibility that Republicans should not take a lot of comfort in these recent polls that show them doing a lot better?
Well, I don't think there's any comfort for Republicans, period, in an election like this. A midterm, the way that this is structured, you got to run hard all the way through to compete. But I think for what the DCCC has done and what you see with Democratic House candidates, they have two problems, basically. One is that they're electing more primary candidates that are unelectable in the general election. But two, I mean, look, a lot of these candidates are ultimately going to have to answer the question of how they're going to support Speaker Pelosi in the end. And we have a very well litigated question on this where we know where the American people stand, and it's not with Speaker Pelosi.
Chuck, what do you think about that, though? I mean, is she really the boogeyman that the Republicans think she is?
district by district. So I've been running in races all over the country, and there's places where she's highly unpopular, but there are places where they're highly popular. Take the Lamb race in Pennsylvania. People say he ran as a Republican light, and he ran against Nancy Pelosi. He ran for what that district reflects, blue-collar, white voters, and he won. I think you're going to have a lot of individual races that talk about the individual issues of those individual people in those races. And I'm telling all of my candidates nationwide, you have to run in your district on your values and talk to your voters if you want to get elected. And the district in New York ain't nothing like the district in East Texas where I'm from.
Well, that is for sure. I like this pairing. Josh and Chuck, thank you.
Fun. Thanks, Dana.
Take care.